Okay. I give up on trying to make this like my normal streams. We're live. We're just live. Okay. I give up on trying to make this like my normal streams. We're live. We're just live. Oh, I'm hearing this through you.
No,
You need to mute.
I just
Okay. Ah, hey Druid, thanks. Yeah, because Jill's here, I could not do my usual stream starting and I'm a hot mess, you guys. I will share that in a moment. But yeah, so we're just live. So, you know what? While we wait for people to hop in, how you doing, Jill? What's up?
you
What's
know,
new? You got snow?
we didn't get near as much as they promised us originally 7 to 13 inches, and we have maybe 2.
Oh, okay. And your storm that you sent down here last night we got, or this morning, we got a few inches and it didn't really stick. It's like on the grass. So, phew.
Yeah, I'm not sure if
Oh
I'm
no, Kenny, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if I'm disappointed or not. I'm a little disappointed just because we've had barely any snow all season, and it
Yeah.
feels wrong.
It feels wrong not to be stressed out because you can't leave your own driveway. You guys have better, I think you guys have a little better snow handling where you are because you're in the northeast than we do. We tend to get the, people. Jill Alex Tumbleturd. Hey Kenny, 2 inches and you got 13. Okay. Sorry. I think maybe the country flip-flopped itself and we got the mild snow. But so how are you guys? Did you have a good weekend? Was your Monday good? I'm wondering if folks forgot that I moved the although also I usually go for a few minutes into the stream before people show
It's
up.
weird. It's worked in the past when you've done that starting soon screen.
Yeah, it's not that it didn't work. It's
Oh,
problem exists between the computer and chair. Anybody who's ever old IT people, Kenny, do you remember that PepCAC? If you've ever done help desk. I was often referred to as the PepCAC at several jobs because I can make things go wrong that it should not possibly be able to go wrong. So, anywho, ID 10. Oh, ID 10T error. Yeah, idiot error. Hmm. um, yeah. So, what'd you do this weekend, Jill?
I've been going, well, I'm doing lots of last minute social media posting for AQSG Winter Seminar this coming weekend. That's been time consuming, and then rushing around trying to get quilts ready for the vendor mall myself because I've been so busy doing their social media stuff and the dealing with all the vendors and getting everybody ready to go and the blah blah blah. That measuring quilts and taking pictures is pretty time consuming, especially when I'm beholden to the light outside.
Oh, yes, that's the worst.
So I have yet to like get a light kit just because they take up so much space.
They do. And I have one that's not super great. I've had it for a long time, but it does. It's like, excuse me, getting it set up and that you like got umbrellas and poles and crap. And then, quilts obviously have to be either hung or laid out if you have the space. Yeah, it's a big hassle. And I photographed a couple quilts the other day. I just don't have any place in my house really, except one place to hang up. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, you've seen that space. There's a stairway, a banister that cuts it in half. Just because my house is small, I can't back away from a quilt far enough
No,
to get.
it's a big space commitment.
Yeah, and I mean you live in an old house and I don't know what your wall situation is like, but it's tough, depending if you don't live in one of those houses that has like the cool loft space where you can put the quilt out on the floor and like take the picture from above. So yeah, I had to photograph 3 quilts outside the other day. I was losing light and it was windy, so the quilt is like the struggle is real, It's a wonder that quilts get photographed at all
It was
by,
even
amateurs.
it was even difficult for me the other day taking pictures of a quilt at the museum, which has the floor space, but then you have to get high enough And it's because like we had to get all four corners in the picture, and
Yeah.
it took like
Yeah.
20 pictures to get all four corners.
And
Because we're just
it's
like
like,
hanging the phones like, like.
or you're doing something dangerous on a ladder or
Mhm.
something like that. It's funny that you bring that up because I don't know, a lot of times, like if you're going to enter a show with a quilt and you need to send the picture in for like jurying, um, like that's no joke. They're very specific. Like sometimes it's like, you can't have like greenery in the background because you hung it on a fence. You can't, if you like, you can't just hang it over a banister. You have to show all four corners, and you can't have like maybe clamps. I mean, I know sometimes guys probably see like I clamp my quilts to stuff. Can't have that stuff showing. Your detail pictures have to be nice, and I know that I take pictures and show here that are utter garbage compared to what the standard is. My perspective is if it's pretty and you could see some cool stuff in it, it's a good quilt picture, but that's not
Well,
necessarily the
another major
standards
reason
for
why like people when people are like, "Are you gonna enter quilts and shows?" Not really, just because what a hassle.
what a hassle to take the pictures, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's
especially like with all that criteria.
yeah, it's really nice if you are lucky enough to have, like a friend or a colleague or something that knows a little bit about photography and like might help you out. But if you have to have professional pictures taken, and that has always been like pricey, and then rightly so. I mean, photographers have to make a living too, and I think people that photograph big stuff like quilts also have the same issues that we're talking about, like space, equipment, all that stuff.
Hmm.
But also, I think we've talked about this before. Like taking pictures of quilts can be tough because of the nature of the surface of a quilt and the lighter color a quilt is. It's difficult to get that surface detail, and I think even like dark quilts also sometimes are quilts that don't have a lot of contrast. It's difficult
Hmm.
to get that quilted detail and have it not look weird and bumpy, I guess.
Hmm.
Hey, Modern Quilt. Yeah, so you were watching the AQSG auction preview. How was that? I missed it. And I haven't had a chance to circle back. So did you watch it, Jill?
Did I watch what?
The AQSG auction preview? I
Oh
think
yeah,
you were gonna.
I watched it on Facebook and commented constantly and engaged a lot.
Yeah, that was I was bummed I missed it. My flight was very late yesterday, and um yeah, I'm bummed I missed it, but I didn't realize there was a replay. So I guess is that on
Hmm.
Facebook? There's a
Yeah.
replay. I'll have to check that out this afternoon.
Nope, that will yes, Marianne Fons donated a quilt that she made.
Yes.
Um
Yeah.
there's a quilt in there also from Barbara Brackman. There's a bunch of kind of
There's
like AQSG memorabilia quilts.
there's a
Um
quilt in there that I have bid on already. I did my early bid, and I'm sure I will not. I mean, I mean not. Yeah.
I don't currently
I
know how many
suspect I'll be
people.
outbid.
I don't know how many people right now are registered for the auction. They did push the fact that you don't have to be a member to register for the auction. It's open to the public. The only thing that gets waived for you if you are a member is the buyer's premium is waived and the shipping.
hmm Buyer's premium and shipping, particularly for like professional auctions, like auction house, like Dana runs, can sometimes be sort of like they can blow your budget if you are
Hmm.
like in a really tight. And I often am. I don't have like massive disposable income to just bid willy nilly. So, if you're used to like eBay, it's kind of a different world when you're dealing with like an auction house.
Hmm.
They have different needs, and the standards are a little bit different, and stuff, and that's how they make money, right? The
Hmm.
buyer's premium is
Hmm.
is sort of, yeah. So but I'm kind of excited about the quilt I bid on, and I don't want to tell anybody what it is because I don't want anybody to outbid me. But that it's a small lot of quilts, right? Like there's
20.
only like 20 lots. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah. Oh, you like to watch auctions? Yeah, Kenny, I agree with you. I just feel like for our experience at the AQSG seminar, there was some fierce bidding on that auction.
Well, and
And
our table walked away with a lot, like our table had probably the most wins.
yes,
And
so you got a quilt, right? Didn't you
I
win
got a
one?
quilt, Mia got a quilt,
Uh-huh. El
Lisa
Riggs
Riggs
got a
got a
quilt.
quilt,
Word and Bird Nerd.
she got a quilt. I feel like there was one more.
I
Maybe
can't
not.
remember. I just remember being like, "Ah, this is so exciting." It is like I feel like it's nerve-wracking, at least to me,
Well,
you
you
know?
got super nerve-wracked on the silent auction.
Yes. Because a certain auction house outbid me and I was like, oh. But
Yeah,
yes, like a live auction,
you were
I just
literally
feel like
like a mother hen sitting on her eggs for that for that silent auction. I remember
yes.
you leaving being like, I gotta go watch my stuff. Like,
And the thing was, I mean, I know, and it was hard to kind of, particularly for that silent auction, because silent auctions are major fundraisers.
mhm.
That stuff is donated. It's a major fundraiser, and of course, I had a budget. I mean, that's the sucky thing with auctions is like when you have a budget, like you can't just be like, "Oh, I'm gonna bid, 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 bid." So I was kind of like, oh, I'm gonna lose this cool stuff because I can't keep bidding on everything. So it's like yeah. When you're a baby collector, it's tough
I mean, I
for
walked away
sure.
with a ton of books from that silent auction.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I mean, that's the one cool thing about AQSG as an organization is some of the earlier members that have pretty large collections of books and sort of ephemera and some of the, I don't want to say like the more disposable stuff, but the things that aren't like one of a kind quilt sort of things. And they're
Mhm.
very generous about donating those things and sharing them. And that's, I mean, I go back to the fact these are my people and I love them. Um, oh, Fuzzy's here. Possibly to hopefully not cause hijinks like Jill and I cause hijinks on their streams. But good to have you, my friend. Um, yeah, so I think we probably have a small group of our regulars with us. So I think we could just kind of get started and um you guys, this might be a short stream. To give you the background, I know I told you some, last week I traveled to San Diego. It was a really fast turnaround, and that, they always say fly west is fine, go back east and you die, with all of the like the jet lag and all that stuff. I had some disruption in my flights yesterday because I had a connection, and of course, weather was bad all over the country, and so that caused me to get in much later than I originally was going to. And one thing that I discovered about myself, and Jill and I were talking about this before I started the stream, is that it's tough. Like when you pay for a conference yourself, you can kind of like dictate how much you get involved with and do. And also, in the past, and I'm corporate employee, some of my jobs have involved like a lot of conference work, particularly one employee I worked for not long ago. And employees are always expected to, like, when your company has a big conference, employees, doesn't matter what your job is, often employees are expected to just jump in and work the conference. So I was used to doing those, and they're hard work. But when you're like the employee doing this stuff, you could be like, all right, I'm done with these conference goers. They need to get the hell out of my way, and I need to go back to my room, and I just need to like decompress. And the same thing when you paid for your own conference. You go and you're like, all right, guys, I'm going to dip out of this session, or I think I'm going to skip dinner tonight, right? But my situation was different because this is a client that I've been working with, and they sponsored me to go to this conference. I didn't have to pay for anything. Food and everything they paid for. And so you're kind of in a position where it's not super cool to be like, I'm going to eat out of the vending machine because I don't want to hang out with you people at this like lovely dinner you've invited me to. Because, it's like a double-edged sword because I'm like, I'm hungry and they're going to this like freaking awesome restaurant. So I have to go. And I think the thing that I learned about myself a really long time ago is I'm an introvert. And even though I can come, I can do this. I can do this any day of the week. I can stand up in front of an audience. I mean, many times I've stood up. In fact, in this conference, I stood up. It was probably like 300 people. I did a presentation for, no problem. But it's that interpersonal stuff when you're in a crowd and you're constantly have to be on, and, the shaking hands and the hanging out and the excitement and the intensity of that excitement. I mean, I think we all experience it with quilts. So, it just gets like really tough. And I think people that are extroverts, like they get their energy off of that. And to me, that all of that people energy starts to like drain me. So I am feeling it today. And I thought about it. I knew it was coming. and sort of lack of sleep and the jet lag and all that stuff. I'm just not on top of my game. So you guys are getting, I wouldn't say the worst of me, but it's not the best of me today. And so thank you, Jill, for being willing to come in and sort of like carry the weight here. But what I would do want to say to you guys is Thursday, I have some goodies. While I was gone, some of my book purchases
Oh
arrived.
my.
The Villainous Hidden in Plain View book. And the other, I'm not going to beleaguer my jet lag and all that stuff, but one of the things is like when you're so tired and you can't sleep, you're like so tired, you're like eyes closed, brain turn off. I had trouble with that last night. But because this book, I started flipping through it. I was too tired to like actually read it, but I started flipping through and like looking at sentences, and there's some stuff in here. First of all, there's some stuff in here where I'm like, oh, I did not know was in this book. A foreword by Questa Benberry. Did you know that Questa Benberry wrote a foreword for this book?
I did not.
I did not either. Gladys Marie Fry also, I think I knew was quoted extensively in this book. And I mean, she is an important figure. She died not too terribly long ago, definitely within the past decade. She was a historian and folklore, African American art and folklore, researcher and professor at University of Maryland. Sort of, an important person in terms of researching African American art and quilts and history and all that stuff. So she's quoted in there. And then, there's stuff about Elizabeth Halford Scott. But then as I flip through a little bit more, there's some stuff in here about Harriet Powers that I'm like, not only do I like, I don't want to question it and say like, what? What? But I'm also like, where did they get this information? And there's stuff in here there's stuff in here that is annotated, like there's endnotes and footnotes. There's stuff in here where there is not a single citation.
Citation?
And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, where on earth did you come up with this? I mean, I would love to know. I would love to see like, how did they reach this conclusion? And what's really funny, I don't want to go on too much longer about this, but the conference that I went to this weekend, it's genealogy related. It is not just run-of-the-mill genealogy, though. It's got a law enforcement component. I think I've talked a little bit about that. I can't say much more because I'm under an NDA, but the fact that genealogists, if you're searching your own personal history, or you're searching a client's history, or in the case of the people I work with, you're possibly searching for the identity of unidentified human remains. They can do that with genealogy now, and DNA, and some of the law enforcement aspects of this that they use, in the case of really bad felonies, like murder. There's this really important aspect, like you have to be sure, and DNA is great for being sure. But when you're researching history and stuff, like you can't make a conclusion that you can't substantiate. It's great to have these like stories, these stories that come down through our families or that are put out there. They're super stories, but like, and they may be true. They may be 100% true, but if you can't substantiate it as a historian or as a person who's doing research, and I mean, you did research in your master's work, you can't like make this like, you can't say this thing and say with 100% certainty it's true. You have to say, we can't find the evidence to support it, but apocryphally or whatever, these stories have come down and this is what we have concluded. But still, it's not written in stone. And so I guess that's the piece of it I've kind of learned from that piece of my professional life, just being exposed to that. I mean, I don't do that work, but just being exposed to it is really interesting and it's taught me new skills. So when I read these historical books and I'm like, where's your citation? Or where is your explanation about how this was anecdotal? Or where the documentation of families where you heard this folklore? So I think that was like what I was getting as I was skimming through here. And so I'm looking forward to being able to like share some of that. Just, and I'm not gonna sit here and like say like, how dare these people say this stuff? I mean, it's not my place, but I just like out of curiosity, I'm like, and so they're making claims about Harriet Powers. And remember, I showed you guys Kyra Hicks. Now, Kyra Hicks, she wrote this book like more than half this book is citations, and Jill has this book, more than half of this book is citations. So she did the work, or I think there might have been some folks helping her, but the folks that, contributed to this information did the work. And there's extensive information here. I mean, I think I mentioned to you, there's like letters and sort of, I don't think it's diary entries, but letters that
Mhm.
Harriet Powers was like writing herself or communicating information. And it's like, we have that stuff. We know what she said about herself. So where does the stuff that she didn't say about herself come from in this book? you know? So yeah, I want to like, I gotta, when I do this deep dive in this one, I gotta like pull this out and compare, because this is written by African American scholars. This is a little bit of a different situation. I mean, there was an African American scholar involved, historian, but
Ugh, that
so
makes me want to actually like read it now. You
yeah,
can and you can tell I'm just thrilled.
well, the thing is, it's like I don't necessarily want to read it, but I also want to see, like, if you've got a citation, I think it's something I want to hear. I want to know about. I want to, it's like it's trivia and facts and information that are really great to just have in your back pocket, because it's great to have this knowledge, right? And so also I brought this lovely with me along with
Oh,
my, all of my little citation and documentation and annotation stuff. And then, of course, didn't pick it up the whole time. On the flights, I was like,
oh.
do I want to read? No, I don't want to read.
You
So,
know, I always have the best intention to read on a
yes.
flight, but I actually can get motion sickness reading on a flight.
Oh,
So
and yes, you would have hated my flight from Nashville to Baltimore last night. It was an hour and 10 or hour and 15 minutes. An hour and 10 of it was turbulence. They didn't do drink service, anything. They were like, it's just too, we're really sorry. Hope we can make it up to you in the future, but we can't support like service right now.
I've
So,
had a flight that turbulent going to Florida once, and I was green by the time I got off that plane. I
yeah,
had like super vertigo, like it was bad.
I tend not to get motion sick. Um, I've just like, I don't have like whatever. My husband does though. And I told him when I got home, I was like, you would have hated that flight. You would have just been like, because it was one of those, and you're like, oh, it's like being on a roller coaster. And then you're doing this and you're like, oh my God. Blah. So I get it.
I mean,
But luckily it was a short flight.
thank God for like the invention of like the TVs on planes, because I can just kind of zone out. And but when I think about it, I'm like, what did I used to do? I used to just stare out the window. That being said, the longest flight I've ever been on is like 3.5 hours. So
Uh,
I've never had to like, I can't sleep. My brother's been to Japan a couple of times, and I'm like, how do you like, oh, just sleep. I don't, how? Like,
it is difficult, and I would say when I've flown to Europe, I have definitely had a little help with Xanax. Definitely helps. I think you could kind of get a short-term prescription from your doctor if you
oh, you
struggle
can
with
you
life.
definitely can. If I was
So
going to Japan, I would totally pay the money to get like business class, and I would totally be taking some drugs.
yeah, I have to say, like I've never been lucky enough to be in business class or first class. I have friends that always, like, no matter what, they'd always buy coach and somehow manage to upgrade themselves. And I'm like, how do you guys do this? Never works for me. But I too would, like, if I was gonna go on like a really long, like, oh my gosh, flights to Australia from where we live on the East Coast. I mean, I don't think they're much better for somebody living on the West Coast, but still, I mean, some of those flights are just like miserable. And that's one thing that's really kept me from being much of a world traveler, is like I just can't hack the flights, and the cost of them as well. But
No, I mean, I like traveling, but the act of the traveling to get there, I hate it.
yeah, nonstop from LAX, yeah. Um, I feel like I had a it was supposed to be a nonstop to Eastern Europe from JFK, and I ended up bouncing around to several European countries on that flight. But and it wasn't a full flight. I kind of had like a row to myself. But even trying to like flip the armrest up and like sleep on a row on a plane, it's terrible. Of course, I sit here and complain, and I'm like, okay, 100 years ago, people could only dream of doing what I did this weekend, right? Taking a cross country flight back and forth, and then, it's like, oh, all in the whole scheme of things. So, all right.
We want to look at some stuff.
Oh, monarch quilt. I think both ways. I was on the window, and the sun was streaming, and even during the like bad weather, we were at an altitude we were still getting some sun, and it was like blinding. So yeah, I had to close the shades, and I didn't want to see what was going on out
I
there.
mean, Monarch Quilt, if you want to control the shade, get the window seat.
Yeah, but then you got the aisle person or the middle person who's trying to sleep, and is like, oh, shut the shade.
I mean, the rule is like the person that has the window gets to control the window.
Oh, don't get me started on armrest. All right, let's get into some quilts and or whatnot. I'm not sure. Is it all quilts
I
you
have some
have,
quilts
or is
and
it?
I have some whatnot.
Ooh,
So I'm gonna show you like my favoriteest whatnot
okay.
first. I bought this for me. This is the only thing I bought for me. Everything else I'm pretty sure is for the shop. But I'm so excited. So it's
Oh, I know what this is.
yeah, you do know what this is. I will read it, but I bought this from Thrifty Whitney online, and it's it's legitimate. I wish it still had the lid, but it does not.
And is Thrifty Whitney's on Instagram, right?
She is, and she's got a website as well. She does some live sales on Instagram, and then she like does her website stuff. So this is Cox and Purves, manufacturers of Zephyr bosom pads, patented January 27th, 1874. The only inflating pads, concave and ventilating. $1. It's
What
amazing.
what a weird thing, first of all, to have in a jar, like a crock. Like this is like a pottery crock, right?
Yeah.
And like what time frame is this from? Did you say? I'm sorry, I was
I think this one was like right at the end of the 1800s.
okay. So this is like Victorian, like we would say
Yeah,
Victorian
Victorian.
era
Yeah.
kind of. Um, I also like the fact that the purveyor is Cox and Purves.
That's really kind of what sold it for me is like, wow, no one thought that name was weird, but then when you think like about the way that like language changes over time, maybe no one was talking about cocks and pervs the way that we do now. It's Kenny, it's not in early push-up. They would be early like stuffing your bra.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes, and I can say that time period, the pigeon breast was
mhm,
like a popular like turn of the century. Like I think a lot of people think of like the big bustles and all that stuff, but the time frame from like especially here in the US, you went from like the Civil War to the turn of the century. Fashions were a tiny bit different than they were in Europe. And just because we were in a civil war, Europe had some other stuff going on, but the fashions changed, and the Victorian influence, Queen Victoria did come here. But that weird pigeon breast thing, it's like you had like a uniboob that sort of melted into your like the rest of the front of you. It's such a weird, like if you look at the side of them, like it's a weird profile. And the corsets that they had to wear to get that weird like
and this would have
so I
been
bet
part of the
that's
padding.
yes, that's the padding. Like if you don't have a huge bust, you have to fill that out. And that's actually something interesting I learned. And I don't know if you ever came kind of across this knowledge. Um, I sort of suffered when I was doing a lot of historical costuming. I kind of suffered from that same idea of like, oh, the corsetry and the tiny waist, and they were all gasping and, swooning. And certainly there was probably some of that, but essentially they did not have wasp waists. They
Mm-hmm.
were padding themselves up here.
Mm-hmm.
They were padding their hips, and they bustled their rear ends. And so it was all illusion.
Yep.
And when you do see those pictures of these women with like just impossibly tiny waists, the pictures, those were like Victorian era Photoshop. Like
Mm-hmm.
they could do that. They
Mm-hmm.
could like go in there and like scratch and edit the I guess the negatives or the,
Yep.
whatever photographic technology was. So there's such a like they fooled us so much that here into the 21st century people still cite that like, oh, these women, their bodies were so different.
I love the whole like it
They were.
moved all their internal organs and stuff. Like,
Well, but that's the thing. That's today. The women that do like that, like very tight, tiny waist, that tight lacing thing, that is an aspect of culture today that they're saying came from the Victorian era or whatever, and it's absolutely not. I would say for
well,
the most
it's
part, people.
the funniest part was if it's interesting that a corset would move your organs more when you have the whole rib cage to protect organs than being pregnant would move your organs. And they know that pregnancy literally moves organs. So it's
Oh
like,
yeah, not to get off on a side note, but yes, that's something they don't tell you. After you have a baby, like your first, I mean, I've only had one, but your first baby, like literally all of your organs have been shoved up here. You've got heartburn because your stomach is jammed in your shoulder and like your lungs are crammed over here and you've been gasping for the past 3 months and you didn't realize it. And then all of a sudden I remember the very first thought I had in my mind after they took me from labor and delivery to like, my hospital room because I gave birth to my son really late at night. And they were taking me and I was sitting there in the wheelchair and I was like, I haven't taken a deep breath in like months. It was the weirdest sensation, and I had a natural birth. I didn't have like a C-section or anything. I imagine it's different if, you've had surgery and stuff, but that was like, I was like, nobody told me this was going to happen. This is really bizarre. And you're
yeah,
absolutely
all this time
right.
they were telling you not to wear a corset, but like nobody mentioned
Yeah,
this.
it is funny, and that's the thing. Like, I think these again, anecdotal stories, right? Um, think about the fact that there's that a really famous like cartoon, and I don't know if it's by like a famous cartoonist or whatever, but you see it all the time. And it's the picture of the woman and she's holding on to like the poster, like the four-poster bed, and there's somebody behind,
Oh,
like her lady in waiting or whatever's behind her with the strings and her foot on her back. Like, and that was men making fun of women. That wasn't anything that was accurate. So oh, there's a scene in Gone with the Wind, yes.
there's also a scene in Titanic where she's holding onto the bed and her mom is
Hmm.
angrily lacing her.
Yes, and this is all that stuff that comes straight from that, like making fun of women cartoon that probably is from, I don't know, mid 1800s. I can't remember what it's
Oh my
from,
God,
but
like it's from Always.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, if we're gonna get a little
but
feminist about it, yes.
yeah, I'm going to have Mr. Cox and Pervs because this is likely created by men, but like I'm gonna leave it like on my desk and like it's gonna
With
hold like stuff on my desk. But yeah, like it's a
I
good
just
size.
I love that. That is so awesome.
I just I just couldn't not have it. It's just so perfect. I can't wait for like the point where maybe I have like some studio office space or something. And maybe like at that point I'm kind of like taking customers like by appointment and like I have this just chilling like on my desk or something.
Stuff like that says so much about your personality as a collector and a seller of things. I love that. I think it's so great. And
So yeah, that was
I like to collect things like that too. I don't have as many funny things, but you have some good stuff. That's really
well, it
funny.
just makes you wonder like did they know they were making the pun back then? Like I really
I
hope they
suspect not.
did because it's so great.
Yeah, I kind of
Because
suspect not, but yeah.
like
It's really
like
good
and
today.
just like what are the odds that those two business people's names, like
Like if you tried to make that up, people would not believe you. People would be like, "Ha, that's great in an Adam Sandler movie." you know.
yeah.
Oh, all
But
right.
yeah.
So what next? Oh my gosh, Kenny, right? Gone with the Wind. And this is a perfect example of the things that get into our like our culture and our public like knowledge, and people
Hmm.
just sort of accept as like, oh, that's the way it was. It's
Yeah.
funny.
So next are some little sewing items. The stuff came from a private collector that's doing some big time downsizing. And I actually already have one of these in my inventory, but it's one of those like little travel sewing machine things.
Oh,
Yeah, when I opened it, I was like, oh, I already have one of these.
I feel like I saw somebody on Instagram recently did, I think it
This
was
is the
Instagram, got something like this and did a whole project. Or was it
oh
maybe
that was
Alex makes, oh
no,
no, what's her name? Rachel. Rachel
yes, Rachel
Maxey?
Maxey, that's it.
Yeah.
Um I think she got something newer than this
Hmm.
because it was battery operated. This is not. This is purely by hand. This
That
is
looks like a
Dexter.
stapler.
This is Dexter Sewing Machine Company, Chicago, Illinois. Um, and it's just a spring activated, but you can see the mechanism.
Yeah, the little thing. I mean, that's what a basic sewing machine is doing.
Yep. It's just a cool piece of machine history, kind of, you know.
It is. It looks like a stapler.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it kind of sounds like one, except for that like punch at the end.
Hmm. Well,
Oh, it
and that's the
actually
thing, like you
has,
have to move it yourself, right? You're like
yeah,
literally going chomp,
yeah.
chomp, chomp,
It's
chomp,
got,
chomp.
yeah, because it's got this spring.
Hmm.
That's like you can literally hear. It even has its pamphlet. Look, you can hem your curtains right on
While
the
they're
curtain
hanging
rod.
up. I feel like that all of those are sort of marketed that way. Like, fix your shirt while it's on your body.
I'm just trying to
Hem
see.
your pants right from your leg.
Let's see. It even has. Oh, I guess it had a needle threader in here.
Mm.
Still has the thing for like threading your needle with the needle threader. I don't think it's, let's see, is it in here? Oh yeah, it's in there. Woo.
What does it look like? Is it like one of those aluminum things or is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
I actually still use these all the time.
Oh, I have a ton of them. Like sometimes when you get an old sewing kit or something, there'll just sort of be a bunch of them littered in the bottom that have fallen
Yep.
out of needle books and stuff. Yeah.
Yep. So
And they're
yeah,
neat because
there's,
I think some of the older ones are kind of nice. Like they
yeah.
were, and then sort of the newer ones, like you can barely see that it's the profile of a person or something. They don't, they don't put the effort into like, I guess they stamp them or something because it's thin
Yes.
in the middle.
Yes. And then yeah, it just like comes in this little like
Ouch.
leathery pouch thing. Great for your junk drawer because that's probably where
Or,
it lived.
or your fancy executive lady on the go. It was
That's
probably more
hemming,
like
that's
the
hemming her
secretary,
desk during the meeting.
that, or it was probably the secretary of the big boss who was told, keep one of those in your in your drawer, toots. Sometimes I need my pants hemmed.
Yeah, oh my God. True story. So next, oh, speak of the devil.
Ah, yep.
That's a Singer one.
Yeah, I feel like Singer made ones
I've
that were a
never
little
seen one
nicer.
with a Singer emblem on it.
Yeah, I have. I don't think I have one, but I have seen those.
So now I have a legitimate like vintage sewing basket of crap.
I love those. I had one of those when I was like, that was like my first sewing basket. I think one of my grandmothers gave me a small one.
Well, that and that's how I'll sell this is a basket full of stuff. It might not be the same stuff that's in here currently, but it's got all kinds of
JV.
like a whole big thing of vintage snaps.
This was like a whole sewing kit that you got then.
Yep, it just came like this.
I love
Needles that
those.
they ripped off part of the thing. It was the family combination needle case. Um, here's another
Safety
needle
pins
case.
and a wine corkscrew when you were the administrative assistant.
Here's another
I
one,
like it.
Piccadilly imported needle case. Some of this old ephemera is just really cool.
Oh, yeah, that's cute. I was like, what is that thing at the bottom? It looks like a USB, but it's a spool of thread, right?
Yes. Here's another one. I've never seen this one before. Prat Prachnoff? I don't I don't know if I'm reading that correctly, but
Well, is that German or
it looks like it could be. And then it's just, well, it can't be that old. It's stamped inside 2003 by Dritz.
oh,
So it's just a remake. They're just
a
trying to make it look
reproduction of
old.
yeah.
I mean, it's pretty looking.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think reproductions can be cool.
What's this? Okay, this is pretty cool. I've never gotten any of this before. Mark your own clothing, linens, etc. with Cash's woven names. John H. Murray makes identification positive, but it looks like it's just a letter.
Oh, is it like a
Yeah, it's just a
laundry
letter.
stamp?
It's just the letter A.
Interesting.
Isn't that cool? I've never seen anything like
Oh,
that.
so it's the tape.
Yeah,
It's it the like embroidered tape?
yeah,
Oh, okay. So I have a few of those where it's rolls of like an actual person's name.
that's cool.
You know, because you could get those made.
I've never seen either.
Hmm. Yeah, I've
I think
actually
I
been
may have
working.
seen some cut up.
Druid says Prachnat is splendid night. A splendid night of sewing, woman.
That's actually not what it says though.
Oh yeah?
So it's
Oh.
it's Druid, pay attention. It's PRACHTKNOPF.
Okay, so Proc might be, well, I know Noct is night, so Proc is splendid, so it's splendid something.
So next, let's see.
Splendid button. That
Okay,
makes
then that
sense.
makes a lot of
Splendid button.
sense. Even though this isn't buttons, why isn't it splendid needle? Like, you know. So the little tray that comes out just has a lot of thread and stuff in it. Nothing very old. It's all vintage. Uh, hmm, hmm. Let's see. A load of zippers.
Was it Marodim who, I want to say Marodim has a lot of zippers from, she has a recent treasure trove of things from family. And
This looks like something that you could use.
oh
Trim.
yeah, I have a lot of that what do they call that? It's hem lace, or what do they
I
call
don't
that?
know. It doesn't have anything. They just put it on cardboard.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really tiny seam binding.
Ooh.
More binding. Oh, here you go. Well, this lace they're calling seam binding.
Hmm.
Flexi lace by rights. I mean, more vintage. It's not.
Yeah,
Super
I guess
old.
that is considered seam binding, but it's not like we know, like the edge of a quilt binding. It's
Mhm.
covering the inside of a hem
How
on a
how much are
random.
hooks and eyes these days? This is 35
I don't
cents.
know because I have so many vintage ones. I will never need to buy a snap or a hook or an eye for the rest of my natural life and probably 100 years after that. Because I
Yeah.
think those are probably the most common thing to find in old
Mhm.
sewing or just sewing kits, period.
Mhm.
People buy them for one hook and eye and then end up having a dozen more that they never use.
Mhm. So, yeah, lots just vintage binding and stuff in the bottom. And then I've got some stuff here that had fallen out. So I'll probably move around and replace some, like I just kind of get all the stuff that comes in it and then kind of fan it out because I've got a bunch of other loose stuff in other containers. So there's this little nugget.
What is that? Are those stitched lines? What is that? Looks like a cookie.
So let me see here. I have some pins here. So
So it's a pin keep.
I don't know, it's pretty hard.
Hmm.
I'm trying to put like pin in, but it's pretty hard.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, you'd have to force it in there. So I don't know. This stuff on the top is like a rope with a rope around it. And then the red was like um it almost kind of looks like wool roving that they just kind of pulled
Huh.
around because you can see some areas where like it's lifting.
Oh, it's yeah. Huh. That is an interesting looking thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty little doodad. I'm just not entirely sure because even the middle here that you would think would be the pinky, I'm not
Right,
sure.
right.
That's like loose fibers too. Like I can
Huh.
go zoop and move them.
Hmm.
So I'm not, I will probably have to ask the person this came from. Because like I said, like let me see if I can try a smaller pen. Um,
That's a good question for you guys. If you do have possession of any old sewing kits or have bought or inherited anything, have you found stuff where you're like, what in the hell is this? I have some of those. And some have been solved for me. Like I, shown them to my mom and our other collectors, and they've been like, oh, that's what that is. But then there's other things where people are like, and it's one of those things like stuff ends up. I don't know if you guys remember when I don't think it was when you and I were on a stream, but I remember showing everybody the what I had originally thought was a darning egg, a glass darning egg. And it turned out to be one of those eggs that they use to fake chickens out and make them lay. And it was
wow.
and it was probably a thing like, a lady was like, I gotta darn some socks and I don't know where my my
Let me use this fake butt nugget to like darn these socks.
yes. Well, because it's almost, I mean, it's glass. It's almost identical to like an actual wooden darning egg, but it's glass. And I mean, I thought it was a perfect solution. The only bad thing would be like if it broke, because it's
It's
glass, but
probably glass to conduct heat,
mhm.
like because the eggs would get warm.
Yeah,
But
that
yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to ask what this is, but it
Yeah.
especially with like it's like a maroony color if it's not coming through very well. It would have been very pretty, you know,
Mhm.
in its
I know
original
this is,
state.
I'm 99% sure this is not what it is, but I feel like I've seen where like when they do like braids of have you ever seen those things where it's like a stool sort of, and they make those really complex braids? I know there's like a Japanese tradition, but there's also like a European tradition of, doing these braids,
Hmm.
and they're like weights. They're
Hmm.
these sort of weight kind of things, and
I mean,
I'm sure that's not what it is, but that's like what it looks like to me. Like that's just like that it's
you
conjuring for
could
me.
feed something through the hole in the center.
Hmm.
Um, but it's not heavy at all.
Yeah. Okay. If it's lightweight, then it would
No,
definitely not
it
be, I could imagine.
feels like your guess that it was a pin keep was originally my first guess too. It feels
Hmm.
like one, it looks like one. It just pins aren't going in it very easily at all. And I
Mm.
don't want to just like shove a pin in there. And when you
Yeah.
think
And
about how thick
yeah.
pins used to be, they're thinner
Mhm.
now than they used to be. But I will have to ask the
It's
collector this came
probably
from.
something like it's like a drapery doodad or something decorative or something you're like, oh.
Yeah, well, in that case, it's like, well, that was anticlimactic. Like, it's funny, just kind of just like the random doodads
Hmm.
that come in here, like this old wooden spool.
Yeah, and that's probably from some type of factory or looks like the bottom of it's kind of gear. It's got like little
Yep. Yep.
doodads like a gear on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was probably some kind of mechanized.
Yep. I just like stuff like this I just find fascinating.
Mhm.
It's not particularly interesting in and of itself as like, oh my God, it's this big amazing thing. But the thought of like, what did this do? Who held this? Who used this? How was it used? Like, I just find very interesting.
Yeah, from a
Well,
historical perspective, it's those little tiny things that I think probably most people, your average run-of-the-mill person would be like, "Ah, this is probably trash or something." And we're like, "Oh, it's interesting, even though it's a wooden doodad."
So we've been looking at some clamps. This
You know, I
is,
love a clamp.
I don't know if you're gonna love this one.
Oh no. Oh, well,
So, right, it clamps. It has the littlest baby pincushion I've ever seen in my life.
well, that's interesting.
But look at how it clamps. So, like, normally this would be on the bottom,
On the
right?
bottom, yeah.
How are you pincushioning that pincushion?
Yeah, that would probably because you'd be shoving the pin or needle in from the underside. You'd have to have that on
Mm-hmm.
top, or at least horizontal. Like if you had a rail. Do you think maybe it could be like on a quilt frame or something? I mean, is that me just taking crazy leaps? Like, do you think it was maybe meant to be horizontal versus up and down, like on a table?
I mean, it certainly could be, but like, good God,
Mm.
that's like the smallest pincushion in history. Like, let me
Yeah, that's
just to give
certainly
you perspective.
yeah. The bird ones have like usually a pretty substantial. I mean, not huge, but a pretty
They have a
substantial
really
place to
tiny, they
put.
usually have a really tiny one on their head, and then they have a bigger one on the
Hmm.
body. But like, there's a pin to give you some perspective of like how tiny that is. When I first looked at it, I'm like, does this go to a car?
You know, I mean, I'm just struggling because I'm thinking like, um, you know, that sometimes the little children's sewing machines, sometimes like I know the Singer ones had like a little clamp to hold the little sewing machine, the little toy sewing machine to the table.
Oh,
I do know
yes.
that, but it wouldn't have had that little pin cushion, is what it says. No, I wonder if
Yeah.
it belonged to some type of other, like it had some partner purpose, something
Oh,
else. I don't know. That's
it
weird.
very well could. Um,
Hmm.
it's really has a lot, like most of my like, just has to do with its shape and configuration.
Hmm.
Because
Now it's shiny. Is it kind of?
not even the underside, hold on, where the clamp would go down. Usually the undersides of those things are flat. This is not. It's not flat. You can, like, it
Oh,
goes
okay.
inside there.
Right. So it's okay. So it's shiny. It seems to me like it's a later like it's
Oh
like
yeah. Like,
1950s, 1960s kind of.
it very well
And
could be.
and it's shiny because it's got like an electroplated or something, like it's sort of chromish.
Mm-hmm. Trying to look and see if there's any kind of like maker's mark. I mean, we're definitely missing some things because the this part would have had
Signifier.
like, a pad or something on it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
Oh
gone.
yeah, I could see like some kind of little rubber thing maybe
Yeah,
that went
that
up
would have
there.
had something there, and that's gone. I don't see any like markings that say anything. I don't know. I mean, this would be something like good for like just a Google image search to see. But yeah, when at first I noticed like the clampness, I'm like, oh cool. Uh-oh. Oh.
I like it because it's a clamp, but we know it's not like a normal like the bird clamp. So
Mm-hmm.
what the heck was it supposed to be clamping?
Yeah, the mysteries abound. But I
And
mean,
again,
like, we
inevitably you come up with this romantic story for it, and then you find it like somewhere on eBay and you're like, oh, it was the thing that went with this other thing that's not that interesting.
so then came this little box that's in pieces. Just trying to find. So it's in, I think it's in Japanese.
Ooh, we've many
And
times spoken of the Japanese manufacturing that is both amusing and well made.
yeah, and it has the instructions in Japanese. So I don't know precisely what came in this box for sure, but it is something to do with needlework because these instructions, sorry, they're folded, so I'm just trying to hold them. They show a woman doing needlework.
Oh, interesting. That's really interesting because, a lot of like today, if you buy like Clover's an example. If you buy like Japanese sewing notions and tools, they'll have the pictures, even though it's written in Japanese, they'll have those little pictures of the tool or object in use. But I'd never
Mm-hmm.
seen people in those
Mm-hmm.
little drawings.
So that little thing came in a little box with a little lid, and I mean the box is has been well used, and then I feel like that box came inside a bigger box, which again is you know
Hmm.
used, has this that sticker doesn't really tell us anything, and then this it has another lid which again just has writing on it.
Okay, so we're talking
So
about boxes inside of boxes.
yeah, well, I'm pretty sure it's boxes inside of boxes. Let me just check. Or it could be two different. Nope, it's actually two separate boxes.
Okay, and so
That
am I
one's
skipping ahead? Is there an actual thing inside those
nope,
boxes? Like,
just
okay, so this was just the packaging then, and we're
it's
left
just
to
yes, it's just ephemera at this point because it's
okay,
just
so we're left to
packaging.
wonder is exactly what was in here.
Yeah, except well, I mean, I think it's cool that I'm guessing because of the size, right? So like here's my hand.
Hmm.
If it was needles, like embroidery needles, um, would be my guess since Asian culture does a lot of they have a lot of embroidery, especially Japanese embroidery.
And
Um,
you know what we have missed?
hmm,
I meant to highlight it. It's the usually it's in the new year. There's the Japanese or maybe is it
Chinese
Korean?
New Year?
I think it's Japanese. No, it's that the ceremony of like saying goodbye to your broken needles. You're
Oh,
basically you've never heard of this? It's a very
no.
cool thing. And I actually had I have several I have this like the tip of a needle that it was broken. And basically you're basically having like a little funeral for your broken pins, and I think it's really the needles, the broken
Mhm.
needles, and you have like it's a little ceremony. You thank the needles for their life and their what they gave to you, and then like I don't know what I can't remember what you do with them afterwards, but I had
That's
some
cool.
here, so I guess I'll have to save them for next year. I think
Yeah,
it
so
was
like
like a couple weeks ago.
these would really probably just be sold as like ephemera, kind of a thing for
Hmm.
people that collect that. I mean, I could probably just Googling the images, I'm sure would bring up
Hmm. But you could
whatever
translate
they
the text too with
hmm
a Google image search.
And then the last thing, oh, this is not what I thought it was. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, oh, I think this came in one of the boxes.
Oh, okay. So one of the missing items from the box.
Well, I'm guessing because this also has the writing on it. Now, let me just look at that ad again and see if that's in the picture. This paper is really fragile. Oh, oh, I think we've solved the mystery. I think this came in one of the boxes.
Okay. So this is a Japanese clamp.
So
So
I
is it a
say that
specific
I
type
don't
of
know how well I'm going to be able to show you because it's so small.
so this is a specific type of needlework slash
It
craft.
looks this metal clamp looks like the clamp that's being shown on this. I'll try to get it close. See the clamp on there?
Okay. Yeah. So it looks to me like the clamp isn't is the clamp even doing anything with the fabric? Or is it just like a teeny tiny cushion clamp to the table?
So it looks like it works in tandem with this other object.
What is that?
Ready?
Uh-huh. Okay. What is that doing?
Well, it's a kind of clamp. This is actually like a clamp right here.
Uh-huh.
I
But
thought it
how
was, those scissors that like fold into themselves? That's what I thought
Mhm.
it was when I first looked at it. So,
So is this maybe a box of different types of sewing clamps that you could use?
Well, I feel like
I'm wondering if do you need to
I
translate the
feel like I
text?
can see this other item in here too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna put my fingernail where I think the other item is. I really just need someone that reads Japanese. See it like holding the fabric?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm wondering if this was for some specific type of sewing.
Maybe because
Hey, Tara.
it kind of looks like this clamp is holding the fabric and then she's sewing. But it would make sense if one of these items was in one box and another item was in the other box. And this one actually has writing on it too.
Ah, okay. So this is like you could almost, if you can't photograph that because of the shininess, you could probably do a little rubbing of it and get the characters.
Yeah, and I mean it's funny because this, oh, there's even Japanese writing on the little finger parts too.
Yeah.
And it's funny because this feels flimsy, but actually like when you like using it, it's very sturdy.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
we'll have to
I
do
think
some
research is
research.
necessary.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So QB, Tara, and JB are saying third hand. Third hand. Ah, oh, I know I'll probably say this wrong. Harikuyo is the ceremony of broken needles on February 8th. Yes, I missed it. Buddhist and Shinto. Yes. And there's that idea of like, I think it's kind of that, is it animism? Shinto, I know, has that kind of idea that there are spirits even in inanimate objects, and that there is kind of this aspect of ancestry in that animism, and you know, if something has served you, you thank it,
Hmm.
whatever it
Hmm.
is, you know, even if you're having to get rid of it.
So it's funny, like I totally get the idea of third hand. The only thing is that there's no obvious thing right now that this connects to. A
I
third
feel like
hand has to stand
this
on its
must
own.
be this must be specific to some type of like specific sewing or craft.
Like
But
the only
just
thing I
looking at
can
that picture, like it's like the fabric looks like it's like being pulled over or
well,
something. I mean,
I'm
maybe it
thinking
is
that like
just
this edge here like sits with something
hmm. So there
and
could be another
then
piece missing,
there could be.
or
Yeah, this could be. I mean, when there's some research done, I guess on like using it.
you know
Um,
what? I'm thinking once you get some of that Japanese translated, that it would be a wonderful post. And we could let everybody know what it was.
yeah, and
This is a
though
very
that
cool
was
mystery.
those were the last things in the box there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I love a little mystery like that.
Yeah, that was a very interesting. It's funny because like the boxes were open, things weren't in them. It just kind of it almost looked like trash. Like just
Oh
like
my
I don't
gosh.
want
And you
this
know
crap
what?
anymore. You throw this trash out.
Yeah, you know, that always like when I think about that, how many times I've received things that were just like there was a thing rattling around in the bottom, and I'm like, how many
GB,
times have those things actually ended up in the trash?
GB, I agree that like they probably go together. I just can't in this moment figure out the logical way that they go together.
It seems to me
Unless
like there's might be another piece missing
yeah,
from the
like
total.
that's like I think it looks like they go together in the photo, but I can't see a clear way they go together. So yeah, do we want to see some quilts now?
Yes. Yes. I was
Okay.
gonna mention while you grab the quilts, I remember you showed me one time it's like a Japanese sewing like box, I guess, but to me it's almost like a piece of furniture, right? I remember you
Oh
showing me something like
yes.
that. And they're very collectible, you know, and they're some of them are kind of old. Like it's, you know, this
Yeah,
isn't like a
it's basically like the same kind of sewing furniture that we have. It was just the Japanese version of that, which to a certain extent theirs was better because it has like big pin cushions on it and stuff, which a lot of ours don't. I actually have quite a bit of like antique sewing furniture. That's very cool. I should like take some pictures of it sometime. Okay.
full circle to how hard it is to photograph cool
Yeah.
things. So, okay, wait. JB is saying Sewing Machines Plus has them if you Google shop third hand.
Okay.
So that will be something to check. Mario Dim is saying search tulip Kakahari third hand clamp and tool. Swipe right to an image of it and use. Oh, see, this is the beautiful thing about this stream. Often
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to do the research. Our friends do it for us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys. That's awesome. So yeah, we'll have to post pictures. We'll have to get all that information and post some pictures, if I may put that on you.
Great, thanks.
Or just take some pictures of it and I'll do that.
Okay, so I'm opening this came in a pillowcase. It looks like this might be two different quilts in here. I have not looked at any of these, so I am
I know you
discovering.
guys, and she said to me the other day, she says, you know what? I have some boxes of treasures I have not even looked at. I've been saving for you. So
Mhm.
you guys, she's been waiting to show this stuff to you.
Well, why open crap by yourself when you can open it with other people?
I
And
do
it's
like to
funny,
share the
like,
excitement.
because of um the stuff I've been buying and how long the transactions been going on and how many boxes she sent me. I don't even know what's in each box. I don't even remember half the stuff. Oh.
I just saw a corner that
Oh.
looks very pretty.
Oh, these are wow.
Are are they pillowcases?
Yeah,
That looks
these
like a
are
pillow.
shams. Um, repurposed from an antique quilt. They're really pretty.
Oh. So that's sort of, you know what? That's that configuration. It's like the piecing of it is sort of Carolina lily, but when you look at the colors they used, it's a tulip.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one of the quilt study groups I went to over the past few months, I think there was a quilt where that was the question. Was the quilt maker trying to make a Carolina lily or are they trying to make a tulip? And what is the difference? Because regionally that similar pattern is called different things depending on where.
Yeah, all they did was they just added, I don't know what you'd call this, canvas, just to a section of quilt because they even left the original backing in there.
Oh, and that's pretty.
Like they didn't take the top apart, they just cut a piece of the quilt
Just
off.
cut it up.
Um, so I'm get like this has like some fabric wear and stuff on it. So hopefully it was a quilt that was like just junk and they cut off just a couple of good pieces. But yeah, there's two of them.
That's very pretty. How now, what age would you say the quilt itself is?
You know, it's funny, I've never seen this blue before. It looks kind of 1880, 1890 to me. It's all hand piece. Do
So
you have
now
an
here,
opinion?
I don't, because I'm terrible at dating this stuff. I feel like whenever I see something that I can't like mentally assign to like the mid early 20th century, which is kind of where I've focused, my love of quilts, I feel
Mhm.
like I'm like, 1880 sounds good.
I mean, to be honest with you, like it's often not a terrible guess.
But then I feel like a dummy when like the original gangsters of quilt history go, no, hun, that's pre-Civil War. And I'm like, ooh, sorry.
So,
Um, but here's the question for you and you guys. So I know many of us are against the idea of any quilt being called a cutter quilt. The whole idea of like I don't know, from the 80s until now, people that are like, oh, this quilt's too shabby. I'm going to cut it up and make stockings and teddy bears and coats and all that stuff. And it's kind of like, we know every quilt can't be saved. Some quilts are too damaged. They did this historically, a quilt that's ratty around the edges, cut it down and make a smaller quilt. But the question is like, let's just assume that that's an 1880s quilt that somebody say, I don't know, in the 80s. I don't know what that backing looks like, but in the 1980s made those into shams. They're still being used on a bed. They're still kind
mhm,
of being used in a way that it's bedding. How
mhm.
do you feel about that?
About what in particular that it's still being used on a bed?
That yeah, I mean it's whatever took this what we would see was probably originally a full quilt from in 1880 somebody made, in that time period, and then sometime in the 20th century somebody went, cutter quilt and made it into pillow shams. Is that just as bad as making a quilt coat that you wear once, or is that like good upcycling of a damaged quilt?
I mean, personally, I don't love it. I don't love the cutting up of old quilts at all, unless they're really rough and you can really only save a couple of pieces of it. If I'm selling something that someone is very likely to use as a cutter quilt, I don't even sell it as a quote cutter quilt. I say best for study or repair. And then but I
Gotcha.
know who's likely to buy it. Um and people's ideas of a cutter quilt span quite a range. People will think it's a cutter quilt if it's got like one, you
Yes.
know,
Like there's
spot
bare
in
on
the
the binding.
corner.
Yes.
So, and then there's people that, you know, don't even don't have any of that consideration. And a quilt is a quilt is a quilt, and I'm gonna cut anything I want.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things where like I'm not necessarily angry when I come across things that have already been repurposed. Um, it's more so like
When
knowing.
you see what it was before it was repurposed, I think that's the part that gets me
Yeah,
the most.
well, I mean, I'll tell everybody, when I had my first customer tell me they were going to cut up the quilt they were buying from me, it was a really hard day. Like and it was not a quilt I would have ever thought, you know, would or should be cut up. It was not in bad shape by any
I
means.
remember that day. I remember that day,
Yeah.
and I remember feeling for you because I feel if I don't remember what the quilt was, but I feel like it was one I've seen.
Yeah.
When I think it was a quilt you brought to Maryland for the Mid-Atlantic
Yeah.
Antiques Festival. So
Yeah.
I physically handled the quilt, and I do know that 99.9% of your quilts are in pretty damn good condition. They have small holes, small stains, maybe some binding wear, but your inventory is about finding quilts in a very specific condition. Whereas, some folks sell quilts that they know, this came from the thrift store and it is a raggedy ass, do what you want with it. Your inventory is more about selling to people that want to collect and display.
Yeah.
And
And
I remember that was a rough day for me too, because I was like, oh, that quilt was so pretty,
yeah, well, and it was a transaction that I did in person because I found out that, the person lived like down the street, and I'm like, "Oh, I can meet you." And that's when she told me, when I met up with her, is that she was going to have it made into a coat, and I had to fake excitement for her.
Hope you'll wear it.
And for everybody else, I literally left that transaction and called Steph, and I was like crying because I knew it was going to happen, and this was a major thing I had to contend with by deciding to become a vendor. Is like, this is going to happen. I have a couple of customers that I know are making coats, and I know they're buying from me to make coats and things like that, and it's not great to know, but I can't control it. And that first time, man, and who knows, that probably wasn't the first time, but it's the first time I like someone blatantly told me, and
Mhm.
I cried the whole way home. I haven't
Yeah.
cried since. Now, granted, like if I had, Steph has seen some things I have that are really, really spectacular. Um, and if someone cut up one of those, I'd be like I have something that's signed and dated 1840. Like if someone cut that up, I would be really
Physically
devastated.
ill.
Yeah, like I'd be really
Yeah.
devastated. But yeah,
Okay. So,
if Druid, I agree with you. Like if it's the
yeah.
only way to save something that is just ratted and someone's throwing it out, like absolutely save the nice, like those pillows. If that's all they could save out of it, like great. But if you're gonna take something that was fantastic to cut it down to pillows, and it was fantastic in its like original shape, I don't love that, but like it's
Yeah,
their
and this is
quilt. Like like
yes.
I can't, if
Hmm.
they've got it, it's their quilt. It's
Yeah.
just one of those, and it's not even to say that I've never bought anything. I've bought things that people have made from repurpose because there are some really nice things out there. Um, it,
Yeah.
like it's a conundrum, for sure. And this actually, this next one that I have is in rough shape. Um, there
So
were
I just wanted to mention Mara Dim has something very sweet to say. I have two so badly damaged and I'm going to repair them with kintsugi, which is it's the Japanese. I mean, again, we're talking about the way that the Japanese do crafts and quilting and stuff. It's for a craft, really a craft repair, and I think they typically used it with ceramics,
hmm.
where they'd use gold to fill in the
Oh, I
cracks. I
just saw
mean,
a video of that the
yeah.
other day.
Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful thing, and applying it to textiles, I think, is really cool. It's that you're kind of merging like boro and sashiko with the idea of like an
Well,
obvious patch on something.
and it
Yeah.
kind of highlights where like the breaks were, like on
hmm
purpose.
Yeah.
I found
I
that
really
very
love that.
interesting.
Yeah, so you're actually going to use gold fabric. That's really
Yeah.
cool. I would say the other thing, I think I've come around a little bit on the quote unquote quilt coats. I feel like a person who, I mean, I have seen people that have bought really spectacular quilts and had very beautiful quilt coats made, like, a Lone Star, Star Bethlehem on the back, and then, like some, like on, other parts of it on the sleeves and just, it's all symmetrical and it's just really the maker, the person that deconstructed the quilt and made it into the coat was top notch, seamster or, sewer. And it ends up just being a really beautiful garment. And that's the person going, I bought this quilt for the purpose of making myself a quilt coat or having it made for myself. And I treasure this thing and I'm going to wear it always. I've come around to like, okay, you chose the quilt, you made it yourself, or you chose a tailor or somebody who could make it for you. I think the ones that are really stick in my craw, even with somewhat damaged quilts, are the people that are making their business to gather up all the beautiful quilts and make these coats. And they sit there, and sometimes I suppose some of them will sell their entire inventory over and over. And then there's probably others that have these coats sitting out there and maybe they're not well tailored, or that's the part just like, oh,
No,
this
I
quilt
agree.
got destroyed and nobody is even, nobody was loving it before. And now it's been made into something else that nobody's loving either. That's
No,
the part
that's
that just like,
the part for me is definitely, especially with the quilt coat, is kind of the amount, like people like, and I some of the arguments they make for it is, well, there's endless quilts. Well, that's not true. There's endless
Mhm.
modern quilts.
Yeah. And
Not
I have no
not
problem. You know what? If somebody went and this is terrible, I hope my mom is not on today. If somebody went and took the quilts my mother made in the 80s and made them into coats, I would not be devastated. But if somebody took like the one quilt I have from 1949 or 1948 that my great grandmother started when my uncle was born and made that into a quilt coat, you better believe I'd have some words for somebody. I too would be devastated because there's importance in that quilt to me sentimentally.
Mhm,
Also, I don't think it's super rare, but it's a quilt from the 1930s that I know has historical research value
mhm,
because of what the subject matter is. And so that too is something, it has some issues to it, but I would be devastated if somebody cut that up because there's only so many of those.
mhm. Yeah, so some of the argument that like, well, there's tons of quilts in museums, and there's tons of quilts in private collections, and there's just tons of old quilts just everywhere. I don't, that's not all entirely true. Um,
Mm-mm.
Especially there was a particular Instagrammer that was like, "Oh my God," and like there's a ton of quilt museums and all of them have 5 to 600 quilts. Absolutely not true. And there's not all the quilt museums are collecting museums. So
Right. Some of them
there's
can't
these,
afford to get the new quilts.
yeah,
They're
there's
small,
there's
they're small places. They can't
well,
afford
that,
it.
and like
So
if you're just looking at like, oh, quilt museums, well, they must all have old stuff. Well, Paducah only has contemporary quilts. So like just calm down over there. Um and the yeah, just kind of like the mass production that they've made, I that makes me sad because they
mhm.
don't understand when they say like, oh, there's thousands, but when you see that there's, I mean, I see at least 20 of them show up on my Instagram. I'm sure there's more. When you think that 20 coat makers that's all they're doing for their business, they can wipe through thousands of quilts in a season. Some
Mm-hmm.
of them they make them so quickly. There's
Yeah.
a vendor that goes to Brimfield that is Quilt Coats, and has a big tent, a really big tent with hundreds of coats in it. Hundreds. They're beautiful, but that's hundreds. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I just go back to the fact, like, again, like, what's her name? Bodhi, oh, I can't think of her first name. She's a
Emily Baudet.
Emily, yes, Emily Bode. She's fairly young, but she has made a name for herself in high fashion,
Hmm.
not your Instagram, but like Paris runway kind of stuff. And I was devastated when I saw some of the quilts she was cutting up. I mean, signature quilts, you guys. I mean, not just quilt lovers. You know who loves signature quilts? Genealogists. Any kind, like family historians. Like, you're kind of taking something that maybe you don't value what they do, but they value what they do. They would love to have access to something like that to do, because it is a document. And Morodom just said this: provenance and documentation are rare. When you
Hmm.
have it, it is gold. That's I mean, I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but there's so much like and this is probably a little political of me to say, but revisionist history is a problem. And when we have these documents, we can say, no, 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 no. The patriarchal version of history is wrong. We could prove it. We have quilts. We have this body of quilts that say something different.
Hmm.
And that's so important. And I think people just don't understand that. They have not been exposed to this side of studying quilts. We're not just studying quilts because they're pretty. We're studying quilts because they have all of this historical significance that tell us something about women who, and a little population of men too, that
Hmm.
they're telling us something about historical that we may not have access to otherwise.
Agreed.
So I
Yeah.
know I've dragged this conversation out.
Hey, you
And
were
thank
the
you.
one that was all like, this might be a short stream today, but we're very quickly changing that. So
Well,
here's one.
as a Yeti user,
Yeah.
I have had a lot of very strong coffee.
Here's one that's kind of in a bit of rough shape. Like the binding, I mean, God, the binding in some areas is just gone. It is very well loved. It has a really awesome double pink that I've like never seen. Ooh, have you ever seen this double pink before?
No, it's like a stripy.
Mm-hmm.
That's giving me that is definitely giving me late 1800s
Oh yeah,
vibe.
because we've
That
got the
stripy
blues.
kind of stuff.
We've got the blues and we've
Yeah,
got the maroons in here.
that's very pretty. I like that pink.
This is
Oh my gosh,
definitely,
Jill. I didn't even realize what t-shirt you were wearing.
yeah.
We got our Dutton shirts.
This would just be, this would be a signature block, but there's, no signatures on it.
Right. It's a friendship block, right? When it's got the signature, and then we could probably just call it chimney sweep when it doesn't.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Like, so this is one of those ones where I probably wouldn't be like, so this has, where was it? Like, this has some big holes in it.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of, you know, loss here.
Hmm.
Batting shift, the binding's gone. So this would be one that I would definitely list as like display or study, um, that someone might be likely to repurpose into something else.
Hmm. And I could see, like, if you don't have an intention to study and you don't, I mean, I could see something like that. I mean, I cringe about the idea of anybody's work being cut into that has not given consent.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, like, it's not the end of the world when a quilt like that, it doesn't have signatures on it. It's not dated. It's
Yeah.
sad, but that quilt could probably give its life for something new.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's not anything rare.
Yeah. I know that you
Um,
actually have at least one that's in very good condition in your collection or in your inventory. I don't know if you
what?
still have that quilt. You have a friendship. I feel like it looks very similar to that. It was maybe more like darker reddish.
That's
But I
on
do
my
remember you
site or that you saw in my collection? Oh, that's still for sale.
in your inventory. I remember
Yeah,
seeing it
that's on my
when you brought
Instagram
your
right now.
inventory
That's still
down.
for sale. And that's very controlled. That's all maroon.
Hmm.
This is very pretty.
I
For
like the back. I
one,
guess it's the back I keep seeing, that brownish.
yeah, it's a brown, which it's a really nice, wow. Yeah, so here's the nice brown and lots of blue. This is very pretty.
Come on,
Oh,
stop keeping me in suspense.
it's oh my God. Well, it's really big. It's a big quilt. Um,
Sorry. You guys know quilt wrangling is
ugh.
it's a struggle.
Oh, this is a what is it? Rolling Stone? Maybe.
Oh, yes. Those are often signature quilts too.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that
That's
just,
really pretty. Yeah.
isn't it? Oh my God. Oh, it looks great on camera.
hmm And it's funny. That's one of those ones I feel like when you look at it, you're like, oh, that looks very kind of complicated to piece. But once
Mm-hmm.
you look into the block itself, you're like, oh, it's all just like it's half square triangles, or I guess in that case, it's the corners are what is it, like an economy block.
Yeah. Like the fabric's just great.
hmm Yeah, and so it's all just rectangles and stuff, but it looks really complicated from a distance.
Yeah, it's in really good shape. That is pretty. See, it's
Yeah,
exciting
and
for me too, because I
you
I
forgot about this.
forget there's so many great browns. Like if you wanted to
hmm
study browns and they're intact,
And
oh,
brown is one of those, and again, I'm trying to get better at like dating the
look at this
fabrics.
one.
Brown is one of those ones that can really give you clues about date, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because at a
Because
certain
browns
point, the
don't survive
browns are,
well.
yeah, they're unstable because they were using, weren't they using a lot of natural dyes for browns up until a certain point?
Yeah, they do
And they're
that thing too.
just,
Well, sometimes too, if you find particular browns, it's not really brown, it's a purple that
that's right, because
faded.
the purple would like the purple, whatever the over dye would be fugitive or whatever it would
Mm-hmm.
turn.
But yeah, man, that wow. That is
Actually, that back, as you were putting it over there, the light caught it. It almost looks like a purplish brown.
the backing. It's a
It kind of
brown
has a
with like a
purple.
red and with a red and green paisley on it.
It gives it like a purplish cast to me. I don't know. I mean, we're talking about.
You don't know.
Well, we're talking about through screens and cameras and artificial lighting.
That's true. That's true. Although the lighting actually is looking better in here than I thought it was. I thought it was going to be kind of rough.
Yeah. Mod Art Quilt just asked, is that periwinkle was in the quilt that she just put away?
Is what
I don't know.
periwinkle? The blue?
Periwinkle.
The blue would be called a double blue.
Ah, so yeah. From a distance, I think those double blues sometimes, depending on how much of a lighter color in there, they can look much
Yeah,
lighter
they
than they
do. They
actually are
do.
up
They
close.
can often look kind of periwinkle-ish, like color-wise, but it's referred to as a double blue. Or the $100 Lancaster blue.
Lancaster blue.
I just like
Yes.
refuse to
Our
call it that.
our Pennsylvania quilt study friends have smirked at the Lancaster blue and schooled us on that.
Yeah. So this is a tide quilt. Ooh, it's got some really sexy black in it.
Oh, that's pretty. Oh, that reminds me of a Marianne Fawn's quilt from was it when Marianne did the finishing school? Didn't Marianne do a setting like this with some old blocks? There was like
Maybe.
stripes. Yeah, I think she did something very similar with stripes of like a flying geese.
This is one of my favorite like black prints.
Oh yeah. And this is late 1800s too, right?
Yeah, this is probably closer to like 1890 because of, well, we're definitely at least 1880 because we get the maroons.
hmm
Wow, the side border fabric is very interesting. It's a very pale pink, but like the print on it.
Oh, because from a distance that looks beige to me. Oh yeah. Okay. It's a little light or faded, but
It's like a super like peachy pink.
okay.
It could be
Yeah,
a little faded.
on screen that's reading as like a beige color, but gosh, up close, I bet in person it's a lot more.
Yeah, the fabric, like here's a great like morning print.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the fabrics in here are just wonderful. I get really excited.
I know. You know, I think that one with orphan blocks, Valerie. Valerie? What's up, Druid?
Is that meant for somebody else?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll move on. Clarify. Oh, Valerie is the name of the quilt. Okay. Valerie's the name of the quilt.
Oh. So let's see here. Oh, this is an
Oh, what's that?
embroidered. Hold on, I'm upside down.
I see. Is that like a fence? Is that a picket fence?
Yes, it's one of those.
I bet I know what it is.
It's one of those borders by what's her face there.
Uh-huh. Okay. It's not what I thought it was, but oh, this actually is it a Nancy Page / Nancy Cabot? I get them confused all the time.
Yeah, I forget this borders by somebody
So
in
yes,
particular.
there is a garden quilt that was in like 1930s, newspaper quilts thing, that I do remember having a picket fence around it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember it being embroidered flowers. I remember it, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I'd have to
lots of
look back at.
flowers.
Yeah, those are really pretty. Does definitely not Ruby McKim because her flowers were kind of funky looking.
Yeah, look at that.
Although
Pretty flower.
that one's kind of got a Ruby McKim vibe to it. Her flowers were like she kind of crammed them in, so they were almost like squared off on the edges.
Mm-hmm.
They were a little
I
less
would
realistic and
have to
more.
go back and look.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to look at I have a whole folder of ones that I've gotten off of newspapers.com
Like
that
this is really pretty.
yeah. I mean they're definitely worked into like a square setting, they're meant to
Mm-hmm.
be embroidered in a square, right?
Yes. Yeah, when I was like, yes, I'll take that quilt. She told me who this border was by. I just forget who she said. Because again, I don't know what's coming in every box. Like even after this, there's still 2 more boxes I haven't opened. One of them is big, and there is another box on the way. Well,
Okay,
when you
so
think about it,
Druid.
you can only fit so many quilts in a box.
Oh, right. I know. And then it's even if it's enough to fit a ton of quilts are heavy.
Yeah.
Okay, Druid. I'm sorry, Druid. Yes. I'm having a total brain fart. So remember the Marianne Fawn's quilt that had the
Mm-hmm.
flanges? It was called Valerie. That was the name of the quilt.
Ah,
Remember how Mary
we
named
thought
all
you
of
were
the
just being a weirdo and having a separate conversation.
Oh, well, that's fine because I'm having that separate conversation myself. But yes, I had forgotten that the finishing school quilts were also named,
Mm-hmm.
just like the other project, the Foundry project. Mary was naming all the quilts
Mm-hmm.
because they're more charming when they have a name, a human name than like Flying Goose.
That's true. So yeah, look
Okay,
at
this
this yummy brown.
this is feeling pretty too. Is it sort of is it like a little flower or is it a honeycomb? I can't
It's
tell.
a little, it's just little squares made with dots.
Oh, okay. Okay. That reads very differently until you get it up close.
Ooh, there's some very pretty red in here. Well, this is likely a Pennsylvania quilt
Yep.
because of that very pretty brown on the back. A good brown.
A good brown. Yes. And yes, those colors. That's a double pink. That's like what is that? Is that cheddar or I
No,
feel like
no,
some of those
it's
look,
not cheddar. It's
I
it's
feel
just
like some of the lower ones look like a more orangey yellow than the upper ones. Do you think
yep.
it's maybe a couple different dye lots of fabric
Nope.
or were they
Nope, it's different. It's different. That's orange.
okay?
Yep, we've got right next to each other here. You have orange and you have yellow.
And then there's
But this
reds.
yellow is one of those 100-year prints.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Um, and then this red they've used as the sashing is just really, really nice.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is so Pennsylvania Dutch area like
And it's funny because this isn't normally the green print I'm used to seeing on those
yeah,
quilts.
the green print that is usually in these, it is a sort of a green and black sort of print,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a 100-year print, and the I guess the way I don't know if it's the way it's like overprinted or whatever, the black is sort of a greenish black, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
also got green, so it
And
reads
then
very interestingly.
it's interesting, the binding, they've taken the top and just folded it over to the back.
To the back. And did you guys know, I think I've probably mentioned this a few times, but in dating quilts, and I mean this one's an easy one. This is clearly Pennsylvania Dutch because of the colors.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, there's some clues in how whether the binding is made from the front wrapping to the back wrapping to the front, or a completely separate piece of fabric
Or
used
knife
as the
edge.
binding, or a knife edge, or tape,
Mm-hmm.
woven tape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I feel like, I mean, there's probably a couple of other things that I'm missing here, but yeah, that was always really surprising to me because I was kind of like, I just assumed like, yeah, whatever, however you just decided to finish your quilt, like whatever. But there's consistency in communities and time periods, the way that they would finish quilts that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize.
That's the end of quilts. And
All
you were worried you
right.
were going to have a really short stream today.
Oh, we did pretty good. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing those with us. How are you feeling? Are you excited that you have this new batch of lovelies?
I am. I'm really, it's funny. It hasn't even started yet, but I'm looking forward already to when the seminar weekend is over, just so I can have some time to touch things and put them
Yeah.
away and
See,
you know.
this is the part of your profession that I am so jealous of because I mean everything about what this profession you've carved out for yourself is really fun and exciting. But I think the fun part for me is like imagining you in your inventory room just like petting the quilts, and I know it's usually really refolding and putting things in an inventory system, so it's not as glamorous as I think it is, but
No, I mean, I definitely pet stuff. That's for sure. Just like
oh,
fabric. I move stuff around, especially when I'm in here like the other night when I was like, oh man, now I've got to try to like frantically get some new quilts to list on my site for the vendor mall this weekend. And I was in here petting stuff. There's still a huge pile of quilts downstairs that never came back up here. So I picked from that pile first, which had stuff in it that I got on my buying trip to Pittsburgh. And that I had brought with me to the Mid-Atlantic show. So I was like, since these haven't migrated up here yet, I'll pick from this pile first. It also had some Barbara Garrett stuff in it.
yes.
So if a couple of those, but
I mean that's stuff that you really haven't even, I mean that was before the holidays, right? When you
October.
oh gosh, was it that long ago? It doesn't feel like it was that long ago. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's stuff that I know that no, like I mean I've seen some of it, but I don't know that.
Well, I mean, the first batch I bought from her was at Penn's. I
That was
bought like
like what, a year and a half
seven.
ago?
Yeah, I bought like 7 quilts from her. Well, no, it was
Hmm.
less than that because it would have been last June.
Okay. Yeah. So not quite a year.
Um,
Not only
so
can I not do time zone math, I just can't do like,
yeah, June would have been like 6 months ago.
oh, okay.
That was kind of, that was one of those you know, back of the trunk parking lot kind of deals. Cause remember, she's like, oh my God, Jill, are you leaving? Like, I wanted to show you some quilts I have up in Jane Laurie's booth. And I'm like, okay, I'll come. And you went to the car to like hang out outside. And literally me and Barbara come out with like these big piles of like quilts.
Yes, and I saw you guys coming and I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I run up trying to help. And that was really the first time that I actually talked to Barb.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, in passing, I'd seen her like in the workshop sessions and that kind of stuff, but I didn't really talk to her. And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, there's this inventory being carried from one place to another." It
Well,
was very
remember,
funny.
everybody listening, I had texted Steph downstairs and was like, come up here and help me grab quilts because I was not going to expect Barbara to carry all these because quilts are heavy. We have to go downstairs. and she's not a spring chicken, so I was just like, if I'm gonna buy them, I should carry them. And she's just like, no, 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 I'm good. And like, we're literally just these just like big piles. I think I took at least 7, so like, this piles of quilts just. And that was on top of already doing a ton of shopping before that show, which, if anyone's interested, that's the Penn Dry Goods Show. It's in Pennsburg, Pennsylvania. It's right at the end of May, very beginning of June. They already have their schedule for this next one posted. It's really good. There's also there's lectures and an antique show. Steph and I will be there. You
And
should
my
totally
mom, Mother
come. It's a
Cake,
really good show.
Mother Cake will be there.
Yep.
But well, a question, because I know like a lot of you are not local to where, East Coast. I can't remember from last year. They did record them and the sessions were available later on for
Yep.
purchase, right? And
Yep.
that's public. Like anybody can purchase those
Yep.
recordings, right? Okay. So that's something we'll let you guys know if you are interested in seeing some of those lectures that we will go to personally, but you're not local. And I think that, I mean, they're not terribly expensive.
No.
I mean, they're not terribly expensive in the first place, but I feel like they're not very expensive
I
even in the
feel like
replays.
when they sell them after the fact, they're like $15.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't get to ask the questions of the presenter and all that stuff. So,
That's true.
you're just really watching something that already happened. So yeah, look out for that. I'll make sure that you guys are aware when those are available. And it's probably late June or July by the time they get those.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's another great opportunity, you guys, for the quilt study. And I know this year at Pennsburg, there's also some other textile stuff that's not quilts that I'm going to go to just because it's so fascinating. It's one is
Yeah,
about
it was
rugs.
really hard to pick this time for me
Yeah.
because I want to
Yeah.
go to all of the lectures. But it just like AQSG study centers, like, you feel so overloaded, and that show is only 2 days long. So
Yes, that
they're
one is a short
cramming a
one.
lot of stuff in the 2 days, and you leave there and your head feels 7 times bigger than when you came in. Not to mention they always do like a quilt turning. That's really nice because that's really kind of low
Yeah.
key. And then all the shopping that you can do there,
Yes. But the
and
thing is,
the
even the low
mingling.
key stuff, you're jamming all this information in your brain. Even if it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh my gosh, I saw this beautiful quilt with this pattern I haven't seen before or a fabric that's new to me. And yeah, your brain just feels like on overload after the end of
Mm-hmm.
those 2 days. It's so much good stuff. Same thing
Um,
with AQSG, but
I was gonna say, if you price wise, if you had to pick between going to AQSG in-person seminar or Penn's, I would go to Penn's. It's a lot less expensive to go to than AQSG, and you can tailor the event a little more to yourself because you
yeah.
don't, they're not, the event doesn't happen in a hotel space they've rented, like a conference center. It's in a museum, and you get your own hotel nearby. Like, it's much more affordable if you had, if you wanted to go to something, and it's not near as overwhelming.
Yeah, that's true. And I would also say I have not forgotten. I know I've mentioned it a couple times about us doing our own little quilt study, sort of a la Quilt Nerds Quilt Song Parade, but
Mm-hmm.
study quilts. Haven't forgotten. I think it's probably, again, with the insanity that's going on this month for me, it's probably going to be sort of like my Freedom Quilting Bee reading. It's probably going to be pushing a little bit more closer to March, but I'm going to get that form out for you guys. If you've got something, you've got pictures, and you're ready to kind of throw your hat in the ring, so we can start building a group of quilts to look at very soon. So I haven't forgotten. I always say, like, you know
I
what?
don't think I've heard about this yet.
I think because I talked to everybody about it, like on a stream you were not on or a stream you weren't
Mm-hmm.
watching, but I had said, and you and I had talked about this too, about like, what if we did our own online quilt study?
Mm-hmm.
Just and that you and I would kind of like seed it with our stuff if we needed to get
Okay.
people's juices flowing. And then if you
Mm-hmm.
got quilts, and I know this audience has some quilts.
Mm-hmm.
You've got some stuff from family, you've got stuff that you've collected or you've seen or whatever. So we can put some of that stuff up and look at it. It's never as good as looking in person, but it's the next best thing. If you can be here to talk about it or you can share, here's all my thoughts on this, and and here's what it looks like. And I know you can't see all four corners of it, but still you can study it, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I mean, what you and I have gone to these little regional quilt studies, and I know I've been to like 3 of them in the past couple months.
You have a lot
Um,
happening in your area.
yeah, I'm lucky. I really am. I realize how, I mean, I'm grateful for
In my
the
area, it's like
concentration.
herding cats.
Well, I'm lucky because I've got the people that are affiliated with DAR, and I mean they're very serious people, and so I'm pretty lucky there. And not I don't want to say that quilt study in other places isn't serious, but like you're saying, if you've got a folks that are really just collectors, they got a little less skin in the game than people that work for museums when they
Mhm.
come together to study quilts. But the fact that it's informal, there's no pressure. It's like, we've got a theme, but bring what you want and just, what you're excited about. I love that.
Mhm.
And it's just like, if there's something that is so amazing that everybody's surprised by, you spend a bunch of time on it. Um, if you didn't bring anything, not a big deal at all. We'll just move on to the next person that has something, and it's so low
No,
key. I just
and
love it.
we've already got 2 here in the chat that are got stuff ready to go.
Yay! Awesome. That is so cool. Yes, you guys. So yes, I will. It's not gonna happen this week. But I will. Yes, that's at the top of my to-do list because I want to see what you guys have. I mean,
Well,
this
and
is
I
sort
mean,
of selfish
again,
on my part.
if I mean, I've definitely got a lot in my collection, but I mean, there's also there's also things in here. And there's also like a big stack on the bed here of quilts, and
One day
there's
you and I are gonna do a 24-hour stream where all we're gonna do is peel quilts off a bed.
oh my goodness, that would have to reach like the ceiling, or I'd have to just do every bed in the house.
Well, you have an IT person in-house who could probably rig up some cameras for you. And I, although am not very skilled as your IT person, I could rig up something too. Wouldn't that be crazy? Would you guys come to that? Like, would you pop in and out if we did some like insane? I'm not saying this is going to happen or that it's going to happen anytime soon, but what if we did that? What if we did like a crazy long, like one of those gamer streams where they're just on forever? I don't know if I could do 24 hours, but something
I mean,
long.
I could probably do some time. I could probably do
A
some time,
quilt marathon.
especially if you were like bringing in like other guests.
Yeah. Oh, you guys, that's a really interesting idea.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So
Binge viewing
binge
quilts.
viewing.
I mean, we could break it up. It doesn't even have to be quilts. We can look at antique sewing machines. We can look at, we can look at sewing tools, you know what I mean? Because like I got machines, you got machines, like
Yeah.
I got a whole
I feel
toy collection.
yeah, oh yeah, Smartim, that's another option. There as more of us are getting kind of a presence here. I mean, all of you guys have a Twitch account. You could stream from your own account. I know that not everybody is interested in doing that, but we could. Anybody who wants to like take a leap into this unknown, we could do that. We could do like a round robin of like, oh my gosh, so many ideas.
Mhm.
All right, guys, keep those thoughts coming. Who knows what we could get to happen this year? It's still early.
Well, yeah, and well that I mean like we still have only been doing book club things on quilt nerding, but like
Oh, yeah.
we can be
I
doing more
forgot to
stuff on
mention.
that too. So,
Yes, thank you. I wanted to mention because I know some of you are probably maybe watching the replay of our the thing we do on Instagram, which will be tonight. You and I need to talk after this because I
mhm.
I know we had some technical issues we were going to talk about. But we've already picked our next book. If you haven't seen the last, which I know our last stream was kind of rough, technology wise, but this is what we're looking at next, which is Quilt Making in America Beyond the Myths. And I think I'd always said like this is one of the Laurel Horton books. She's the editor on this book.
Mhm.
So this book is actually essays. And some friends of the show have an essay in here.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think this one's going to be a really really like fun scholarly look at some of this stuff. I mean, we're going to really dive into some, I have flipped through these essays in the past, and they're I don't want to say like they're academic or they're intense, but they're like expert. These are written by people who are going to be like, all right, let me bring you into this subject and I'm going to tell you everything about it in like 5 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be like, this is so wild. You know, this is so much information that I, you know, maybe knew and it's confirmed it for me, or I had no idea about this. Um, and I do know that Laurel Horton is one of those people who is like super editor. You got to have all your citations. You got to, you know, she's got, this is good information that's in this book. And the wonderful thing about quilt making in America, it's an AQSG publication. I never
Mm-hmm.
realized that. Selected writings from AQS Quilt Study Group.
Mm-hmm.
And it is an inexpensive book because I think this had pretty wide circulation. So it's pretty easy. As if it still is, I'm assuming it is, it's really easy to find online on ebooks. So,
Yeah,
or
when I
thrift
had
books,
looked it
whatever.
up, it was pretty. I looked up on just Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
So
wish
it's
they
an
would
affordable
just.
book.
I wish they would just like amalgamate already. Like it's like since Amazon owns A books, like what are you waiting for?
Oh, right. Well, it's sometimes I think people cross post anyway. You know, some if you've ever noticed, sometimes you'll get you know, you'll see a book on Amazon that's being sold as a used book, and then you're seeing it over on ebooks, and you're like, I think this is the same seller. I think they cross post somehow. But
Maybe.
this one was published in 1994. And again, it's Quilt Making in America, Beyond the Myths. Yes, I will absolutely put the links and stuff for it also in, um, you know, on the show Facebook page. And then of course, Jill and I would do post all this stuff in the quilt nerding
Mm-hmm.
social media. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we'll get this out there for you.
Yep.
Very exciting. So I've got stuff to talk to Jill about for tonight. And then Cake needs a nap. I am feeling better after all this coffee and, you know, the quilt adrenaline. It is not to be
Yeah,
it is not
you definitely seem perkier than you did when we got on the stream.
yes, quilt adrenaline is it's not to be, you know, it's not to be minimized. It is a thing. Any subject that is exciting can, you know, overcome the need for sleep. But I'm telling you, once I get off the stream, I'm gonna be like
Well, you'll definitely need a nap then to rejuvenate you for the later
yes.
stream.
Yes. And as a reminder for those of you that do follow, we're getting close to we're getting in the home stretch with Mary Schaefer. Oh, that's something to mention. I don't have the link up. I'm sure we'll mention it tonight because of Mary Schaefer. But if any of you follow Dana Balsamo's auction house, um, she's on one of those online auction
She's on Bid Spirit.
Bid Spirit. Okay. You can Google her. If you Google Balsamo auction, you'll find her. But her upcoming auction, I think it's the end of this month,
The 24th.
is you guys. I did the did you have you looked at the deep dive? Did you do a deep
I
dive yet?
haven't yet. I'm afraid.
Okay.
Now after what you said, I'm terrified to look. And
So you
I
guys,
just saw that one. I saw like 4 quilts and that one I was like, "Oh my God, just one."
so she's got Mary Schaefer quilts for auction. Bottom line. So stuff that's in this book made by this woman is up for auction on Dana's you know, Dana's auction house. Also, there's some other stuff, non Mary Schaefer quilts that I'm like, so I'm like, I should not have looked because I know I'm gonna be forced to put some bids and I will of course be outbid because again, budget. But you guys have to go look, go window shop. It is a really it's and I say also follow Dana even if you are not into auctions and or you know just not into collecting because you can learn a lot from what she posts. You can kind of
Mm-hmm.
get like really good close-ups of details of some of these quilts. And sometimes I know I will absolutely be outpriced and outbid on lots of this stuff a lot of the time, but I take screenshots on my phone and so I can reference back to stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was some good eye candy. So all right. Well, let us go. I will call you after this. You
Okay.
guys have a wonderful afternoon. Happy Tuesday, by the way. And we will either see you tonight or I'll be back on Thursday at my normal time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And with that, I will say goodbye. There won't be any closing music because of we're on Zoom. So I'll just be shutting down the stream. So you guys have a wonderful afternoon and lots of love. Mwah. Can
Thanks
I
for
talk to you
having
in a minute?
me.
Talk to you in a minute, Jill. What do I do with my I don't know. I think I lost my mouse. Bye, guys. All right. How do I end this stream? Okay, there we go.